The Torgau Castle Chapel, prototype of Protestant church building. A prototype is a role model, in this case a model for other churches. The Torgau Castle Chapel is considered to be the first and only church ever dedicated by Martin Luther. The altar stands freely in the room and is a table supported by 4 angels. This is where the congregation receives communion, host and wine. In Protestant communion, the congregation receives the host and wine, symbolizing the blood and body of Christ. In this way, we remember what Luther says, namely that Jesus Christ died on the cross so that all guilt can be forgiven. The pulpit is the place of the sermon. It is decorated with scenes from the life of Jesus. Christ drives the changers out of the temple, the 12-year-old Jesus in the temple, Christ and the adulteress. The surrounding galleries divide the room into 2 axes, horizontal and vertical. The altar, pulpit and organ are aligned along these axes. Opposite the altar is the elector's gallery. This is slightly higher than the pulpit, indicating that the elector as sovereign is the supreme ruler of the church, no longer the pope. The dedication plaque is located under the elector's gallery. It has commemorated the dedication by Martin Luther since 1545, and the Latin inscription reads as follows. Prince Johann Friedrich had this church built in his hometown now that God is considering that the true Christian doctrine about his son should once again clearly emerge from Saxony. First and foremost for God, this building was erected here out of pure love, which is capable of surpassing all churches in importance and indeed to this day even all those that existed in the whole world. They were built under the pernicious supreme power of the Pope. What is entirely new now is that for the first time it is characterized by an entirely pure piety. By teaching the truth, Luther, through his preachings in this church, endeared the foundation of Christ's teaching to the people. The news of this church in Torgau Castle, which was not consecrated sanctuary, but is a room in a house where people could come together to speak with God in prayer and song, spread quickly. And just a few years later, churches modeled on the Torgau role model were built in Dresden, Augustusburg, Schmalkalden, Schwerin, and Denmark. The first chapel succeeding Torgau was built in Dresden Castle. Unfortunately, the original has not been preserved. Only a few years later, the chapel in Augustusburg was dedicated. To erect the successor building in Schwerin, a surveyor was sent to Torgau. His notes have been preserved, but not the church. The Torgau model was further developed in Schmalkalden. The altar, pulpit and organ were brought into a line. This principle was copied many times and finally perfected in the Dresden Frauenkirche. Chapels based on the Torgau role model were built in the most important European Protestant royal houses, and these spread to newly built parish churches in the surrounding areas. In this way, the Torgau Chapel became a role model from 1545 onwards.